We are joined now by our senior counsel for global affairs, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and we're focusing in on China, of course, and this dual statements from our current Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, on this idea that he is acknowledging Chinese aggression at home, repression at home, and aggressive actions abroad, but that we're not going to try and contain China. I want to go right to Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, this idea that we've got a current Secretary of State representing the United States and telling the world 2 days after talking about how aggressive China is, that we're not going to do anything to stop it.
Jordan, this misconception that somehow if America plays nice, that the Chinese Communist Party will just leave the rest of the world alone is the mistake that we had for 40 years before President Trump took office and began for the first time in modern times for a president of the United States to confront the central challenge to us, the Chinese Communist Party. When I hear people talk about, well, we don't want to go to war, make no mistake about it, the Chinese Communist Party has declared war on the American worker. They stole our intellectual property. They stole millions of jobs in the United States, good jobs, high-paying manufacturing jobs. They stole the semiconductor industry by subsidizing Chinese state-owned enterprises. To walk away from that, the Biden administration, to walk away from that and think somehow we can go back to engagement, and if we just all get along, the Chinese Communist Party will change its stripes and won't continue down its path towards global power and hegemony is an enormous mistake. It is an enormous threat to countries all across the world, and it matters an awful lot for average Americans each and every day.
I want to play this. I want to get your reaction to it because I think that this key line, because this is the interview just on MSNBC where Secretary Blinken says we're not going to contain, but there's a key part here about so-called rules-based international order. Let's play it.
When it comes to China, we've been very clear that, we're not trying to contain China or hold it back, but we are determined to uphold the so-called rules-based international order that we've invested so much in over so many decades and that has been good for us and good for the world, and I think even good for China.
So international norms, Secretary Pompeo, international law, China sits as a permanent member of the Security Council. They can veto any kind of sanctions there. If it is, I think, impossible to even make that statement without laughing that the Chinese are following any kind of rules-based international order. When you're just talking about the intellectual property stolen from the U.S., the jobs taken from the U.S., declaring basically war on the U.S. economy. From your position as the Secretary of State, did China follow any of the international norms?
Never. When there was the World Trade Organization and the massive violations, whether it was their promise that they made to the people of Hong Kong or one that's still impacting us today, right? They violated the basic norms of how you operate a biosafety lab inside of Wuhan. And the result is that now almost 3 million deaths across the world and billions of dollars worth of economic destruction because the Chinese Communist Party came to have dominated the World Health Organization in a way, an international regulatory body, and then hid the outcomes. Now, this is a country that violates every international norm. The world has permitted them to do this for decades. And the only solutions for the United States to lead a global coalition to confront them and to impose costs on them, unless they change their ways, unless they begin to comply. There's no sign that they intend to do that yet. That means our resolve needs to be all that much greater.
Yeah, Secretary Pompeo, this is Wesley Smith. I think they see us as a declining power and our periodic change of leadership politically as a weakness. Obviously, they do not have that, unfortunately, for the Chinese people. And so they want to take advantage of a change of administration and of what they perceive as weakness in the Biden administration. I have a question because, this is something that goes back to all of my life that's been an issue. And the U.S. government has sort of been on both sides of the issue there. And I know you can't reveal certain things that might be classified. But lately, China has made it very clear that they are intent on retaking Taiwan. They see that as one of their provinces. If they do that militarily, if they were to attack or invade, and of course we arm and train them, how should we respond? And would we be willing to take military action to defend Taiwan? And I know you might be limited in some of your answer.
Yeah, Wesley, I do want to be a little bit careful. But note this. Note how the Trump administration handled this issue. It was Wesley, it was, this, every meeting I had with every Chinese official. I met with Xi Jinping, I met with Wang Zhishe and Wang Yi, all their senior national security team. Every meeting was Taiwan first. You all leave Taiwan alone. This is ours. We're going to go take that island, an island, by the way, that was never part of mainland China, but they pretend was. They use the word reunification. This would, in fact, be an invasion. Our policy was to make sure they were never in a position where they could do this, and they always knew that there would be enormous costs if they even hinted in a kinetic way at going after Taiwan. And so we provided them F-16s through sales of military weapon systems. We provided them with political support. I made the decision to allow our diplomats to meet with them just like they would when a diplomat from any other country. We set the conditions for deterrence so that the risk that we would have to confront that complex problem set would be very, very low. I think the Taiwanese appreciated that. I know it gave them greater freedom and autonomy. That's the right policy for the United States of America.
So for so long, Secretary Pompeo, it seemed like it was an economic war. You talked about the economic battle, but I think we were also seeing the reports now, and that Chinese not trying to hide this about their expansion into the Atlantic. So they're looking to operate now and open a military base so that they've got a presence in the Atlantic, and so they're looking at spots in Northwest Africa. If you look at a map of Africa and look at where the Chinese have got ports that they've invested in and other facilities, they've got kind of the Indian Ocean side, but then to also expand into the Atlantic. I mean, this is, again, we've got long-term interests that we've protected since World War II, and so I think we have reasons to be operating around the world. This is a next level of aggression that is not just economic, and it'd be like alarm bells should be going off.
It's absolutely the case that they have expanded their reach. They created their first military outpost in a place called Djibouti, a very strategically important location. They're working on another one in another strategically important location, a port called Gwadar, South Pakistan. And there are reports that they're looking at islands not too far from Hawaii. So islands far ashore inside the Pacific, in the eastern Pacific, much nearer the United States of America. We have to make sure that free and open trade is possible, that the Chinese don't have the capacity to exert political coercion against the people in those places and deliver the Chinese strategic outposts from which they can restrict the capacity for America and for the world to engage in the activity that has raised billions of people out of poverty over the last 100 years.
So we have about a minute here. I mean, what if you were still in this position? I mean, I think the words have consequences, the signals that we send. So if our Secretary of State goes on, does interviews, talks about how aggressive China is, but we're not going to do anything to stop it, that it seems we're giving them like the green light. Do you think there's a way to reverse it quickly?
Yeah, there is. You have to go back to Reagan, peace through strength. You have to demonstrate enormous resolve. You have to be prepared when they punch you in the face to punch them back. You have to be prepared to confront them when they're spying at your universities and at your biggest companies. You have to close their consulate like we did in Houston, Texas. You have to take real concrete actions to demonstrate American resolve. If we do that, we will push back against the Chinese Communist Party, and we will continue to live in a republic where we have the capacity to live our lives in the way we want. If we don't, we'll live in a world that looks a lot more like the authoritarian regime that China has today inside of their own country.
Folks, I mean, I think that was it right there with Secretary of State Pompeo, is that you've got to be able to, they have to know that you're going to punch back right into the face. If they know that, they act differently.